Hello there. My name's Bhayani. I'm the lead employment lawyer at Bhayani HR and Employment Law. We provide the helpline for the BII members, of which I believe there are about 10,000. So obviously we've been busy. My colleague Catherine here, sitting a safe distance away, is our senior HR advisor. And Catherine and I and other members of my team have been incredibly busy over the last few days trying to provide the best advice that we can in such a difficult situation for so many of you. Some of the common questions that we've been asked, and there have been a real variety of questions, but some of them were, when do we self-isolate? What do we pay our staff is a critical one. Do we have to pay statutory sick pay? What if we have to close temporarily or permanently? What about school closures? What about live-in employees? That's been a bit problematic for some. Can I stop an employee from coming into work if they refuse to self-isolate? Home working, how does that work? And what government help is there for us? So please do have a look at all the available information on various websites. So what I would say is keep a watching brief on the BII website. They've got a really clear section on coronavirus, providing all sorts of information, not just in relation to employees, but what help there is out there for your sector. Have a look at the gov.uk website, and have a look at our website at Bhayani Law, where we'll keep updating the information every day as we find out what's new in the world of employing people within the hospitality sector. So we'll deal with the most recent announcement, which was that schools across the country will be closing from Monday. Lots of kids out there devastated, including my 16-year-old who was gearing up for her GCSEs and her prom, more importantly. So Catherine, first of all, school closures. So one of the questions that we're already being asked this morning is, what do we do if an employee or our employees have to stay at home to look after their children?
I mean, this is a very, very difficult situation, isn't it? Obviously, because these people are not choosing to be at home. They have to. This is being thrust upon them. There are a few different options available to you. First of all, which is the one that we really do sort of recommend most, is to just have open communication and negotiation with your staff around whether there is anything they can do from home, whether there is an option for them to maybe bring their children to work for periods of time in order that they can carry on working. Can you have almost a creche area set up that they can look after their children as well? In terms of what you have to give them if they cannot come to work, that's a little bit of a different question, because obviously there are some situations where they may not be able to work from home. There is something called dependence leave, which is a statutory right, but that is only in emergency situations and would only usually be appropriate for a couple of days. There is, and that would be, you don't have to pay that is on an unpaid basis. There is also parental leave, which all parents have the right to parental leave. All of the procedures for these things can be found on either gov.uk or the ACAS website. Or you can negotiate with them to be able to come to a sort of a happy medium where they have periods of unpaid leave and periods of annual leave as well. I think what's really important is that you need to remember that they don't necessarily want to be at home, whether it's because they don't want to spend that much time with the children or whether it's to do with the money. And so it's about making sure that you do your best to make sure that you have, at the end of this trying time, that you do have your employees still there, and that you have employees that thank you for what they did and are therefore going to be more loyal. And so the more you can do to be flexible and help them is going to be better for both of you, really.
Yeah, we're all in this together.
Yeah, we are.
So my next question is about pay. I know this is really difficult, but everybody wants to know what they have to pay their staff if there's a downturn in custom, or if they're on self-isolation, or if they've got symptoms and they are technically sick. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's two different elements to that question, really, isn't there? There's one about self-isolation, and then there's one about your business losing revenue, and therefore you need to make those difficult decisions. To do with self-isolation, obviously there's no point in me saying in this video exactly what self-isolation is, because by the end of the day it may have changed. So what I would always say is keep on top again of gov.uk NHS 111, because they will give you the parameters of what current self-isolation means. And if it's a period of self-isolation, then it would be SSP or company sick pay, whichever of those two that you offer. And I would just say go back to your policy and follow your policy on that. You need to relax the rules for fit notes, because people just cannot get them at the moment. And you should also consider paying from day one, because although legislation hasn't changed, so they don't yet have the statutory rights to have SSP from day one, we do believe that there's going to be some emergency legislation coming that governs it, so you may as well be doing that from now.
So just to clarify for people, so the rules on statutory sick pay are that there are 3 waiting days.
Yes.
The government announced last week, I think, that those waiting days wouldn't apply and people should be paid from day one. But as far as we're aware, from a legal point of view, that law has not been passed.
No.
But our advice is that you should pay people from day one.
Yeah, because we think there's going to be some emergency legislation at some point, don't we, that's going to govern it. So you may as well be doing it from day one, to save having to back pay people later down the line. If it comes to reducing your workforce, that's obviously a lot more difficult. The thing that we're saying is we're finding it quite surprising how many businesses have been able to have open and honest conversations with their staff about reduction in hours, about having periods of unpaid leave, and how your staff are actually quite understanding about it, and people are agreeing to these things because they want to maintain employment at the end of this current issue that we're having. If you are going to need to sort of enforce things, the first thing you need to do is look at your contract, see what's in your contract, because it may be that you've got provisions for short-time working or layoffs, and that's where you can contractually force people to have either full weeks off or part weeks off in order to reduce your overheads when it comes to your labour. But that's something we'd recommend that you sort of looked a little bit more into to make sure that you're doing it correctly. Further to that, it would be a case of if it's a business closure, then you may be looking at having to either terminate people or make them redundant, which we hope you don't need to get to that point.
Yeah, that's sort of last resort, isn't it? And our blog on our website talks about reducing your workforce, so perhaps we'll just touch on that. We've tried to highlight some softer options, as well as the drastic ones, because of course we are getting calls about redundancies, full-scale redundancies. I think it's really important that you follow the right process.
Yes.
Because from a lawyer's point of view, what I'm expecting, sadly, is that once this is all over, there'll be lots of claims from people for unfair dismissal because employers haven't followed the right processes.
Yeah, I think it's important for employers to remember that just because this is a business closure, potential of a business closure, it doesn't negate the need for you to have to follow that process. And you could genuinely be in the sticks and having to make difficult decisions, and by not following that process, you're going to create a bigger problem for yourself in the long run, where it's going to be more costly for you. So it's worth spending a bit of time doing it correctly now, so it doesn't cost you more in the long run.
And then Catherine, on 0 hours contract workers and the self-employed, we've had lots of questions, and many people feel that these questions are unanswered because it's a tricky area. What have you been advising there?
So there are 2 different categories, obviously 0 hours and self-employed workers. Self-employed workers are likely to be your most easiest to deal with, because you'll need to go back to their contract first of all to see what your termination clauses are within your contracts, but it may be that you can very easily just terminate them almost immediately. Obviously you wouldn't need to pay them things like holiday or sick pay or anything like that because of their self-employed status. Your 0 hours employees, a lot of business owners that we're getting calling up are wrongly assuming that 0 hours employees are not entitled to SSP, that's sick pay. In actual fact, they are, depending on their eligibility. So the best option there is, if you're not sure, go on gov.uk and look up the SSP calculator, and that's a really good tool, and it will ask you a variety of questions, and at the end of it, it will tell you whether or not they are eligible for sick pay. So don't make that mistake first of all. Secondly, in terms of a reduction in your workforce, one of the easiest ways to do it, if you have got 0 hours employees, is to first of all look at just reducing their hours, because obviously the beauty of a 0 hour relationship is that you don't have the obligation to offer them hours. So from a quick fix point of view, we're probably recommending that that's the first place you go.
And I know the government are talking about reducing the eligibility criteria, because at the moment you have to earn,
I think it's £118, yeah.
Yes, but that's looking like that's going to reduce as well.
Yeah.
So, and then finally, lots of people are asking us about government help.
Yes.
And I think some of the things that I've seen, and I don't know if you've seen anything else, but particularly for the hospitality sector, are things like a 12-month business rates, holiday, statutory sick pay relief, so the ability to reclaim statutory sick pay, small business grants, and business interruption loans. And particularly for BII members, keep an eye on the BII website, because I'm sure they'll be putting regular information about grants and relief. Okay, so I hope that's been useful, and just by way of summary, have a look at the BII website, the gov.uk website, and our website, where we've got a red banner with information about coronavirus and how you manage your obligations as an employer. Some of the information about government grants and the business rates holiday, we don't know any more than you do at this point. I know that there is a move by local authorities to not take payment straight away for business rates, but they don't actually know how this is going to work, so we need to sort of watch this space. And my final message really would be, look after your staff. We're all in this together. Communicate, agree terms wherever you can, because that can override what your contractual provision is. Be kind, direct them to relevant resources. Some of the things that might be available to your employees are the Employment and Support Allowance, the ESA. There's universal credit. The government have just announced the protection from eviction for 3 months for people that are renting, and mortgage holidays. And although none of us actually know the mechanics of how these things are working at the moment, that will become clearer, and so just direct your employees where you can to other resources, and look after each other.